Can we get a report out of closed session?
Yeah, Madam Chair, there were no reportable actions taken during the closed session.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, considerable approval of agenda. In the case of an emergency, items may be added to the agenda by a majority vote of the board of directors. An emergency is defined as a work stoppage, a crippling disaster, or other activity that severely imperils public health, safety, or both. Items on the agenda may be taken out of sequential order as their priorities determined by the board of directors. The board may take action on any item appearing on the agenda. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I so move.
Second.
I have a motion by Goodson, a second by Medart. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. At this time, we'll move on to public comments. At this time, the board will hear comments on any agenda item. If any person wishes to be heard, they shall stand, address the board, identify themselves, and state the subject for comment. Time limit for each speaker is 3 minutes individually per item to address the board. Individuals who wish to speak on multiple items will be allowed for 4 minutes in total, which will be capped by our attorney. There will be no giving of one individual's time to another individual. A total of 15 minutes shall be allocated for each item for all members of the public. The board may find it necessary to limit the total time allowable for all public comments on items not appearing on the agenda at any one meeting to 1 hour. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to board comments. Do we have any reports by any directors? Seeing none, do we have a report by education and outreach ad hoc?
I do actually. Yeah, so basically we, through our marketing department or our public outreach professionals, we've started the Stronger Together efforts through TV, radio, and print. And advocacy on work on men's health has been published as well in the news and TV, and also with KYMA. And we're working with ECRMC team on marketing initiatives as well. So that completes my report.
We have a report by 8918 negotiation ad hoc.
No report.
With that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Any member of the board may request that items for the consent calendar be removed for discussions. Items so removed shall be acted upon separately immediately following approval of items remaining on the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
And so.
So move to approve consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mentor and a second by Goodsow. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to item 9, items for discussion and or board action. We'll start with item A, information only presentation by Primers Memorial Hospital Foundation with Mr. John Grass.
Good evening, Madam Chair, honorable board members, members of the public, and staff. Thank you very much for allowing me to come before you and speak today. I'm coming before you as one of the members of the board of directors for the foundation. And I'd like to just chat with you a little bit about some areas that I'd like to share with you. Just a little bit of history. The foundation was founded in 1982 with the goal of expanding emergency and surgical services. At that time, they initially raised $500,000 to build the new, it's not so new now, ICU. And so since then, since the incorporation, the foundation has raised over 3.5 million. We're still raising money for items to be purchased and donated to Pinehurst Memorial Hospital. Donations are received throughout the year from various sources. And one of the areas where we receive donations is from employee payroll contributions. They have been so amazingly faithful in their giving to the foundation. And so we are so grateful for that. Also, our annual gala that we have every year, and this year it's October 17th. And in terms of the donations, so far in the 2024-25 year, we have approved for purchase for various items for the hospital, $468,596. were the equipment, supplies, and upgrades to the hospital. And so with that, just kind of gives you a little bit of background on some of the foundation's activity. With the gala coming up October 17th, we would like to invite all of you to attend the gala. This is an opportunity to meet the public, understand the foundation's inner workings, the donors. There's an auction. That's how they raise the funds, by auctioning off things that are donated, works of art or trips or whatnot to for fundraising purposes. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and take a risk here, and at the risk of possibly breaking down some of the barriers for Mason-Dixon line area. It would be great to have a regional hospital staff administration join us at the gala. I think that would be an opportunity to start whittling away at the divide that exists between communities. I do want to share with you some concerns, and I have a couple of asks. One of the concerns is that as we come up on our fundraising season, we've been told there are some concerns about the donations or the gifts that are given to the hospital, that they would not stay at the hospital given the merger, that they might find their way gravitating towards South Central Regional. That's caused them concern about maybe they shouldn't give, which is concerning to us because all of these things go to patient care, but with their givers, donors, they have some of their own concerns and maybe issues with where some of those gifts are going. Chris Bjornberg at our latest foundation meeting explained to us how equipment supplies are managed between hospitals on a lending basis, which was very helpful to understand that. And so we'll be relaying that to our donors and explaining how their donations are being managed well, and that the equipment supplies may be borrowed by one but returned. And it's a mutual sharing, as I understand, of equipment supplies, and also that some of the equipment that gets lent is not lent unless there's a backup piece of equipment to make sure that there's no shortfall. We want to do what we can to reassure our donors of the management of their donations. The first line of expectation and hope is that the hospital would honor their request for donations to remain at PMH, but understanding and knowing that there are exceptions to that based on medical need, declared emergencies, those kinds of things that where the medical supplies and equipment need to be shared for the benefit of patients. So here's the request. Well, that was the first request, just a reassurance to the donors of how their gifts will be handled. And I would suggest at this point that the board may generate a letter to our donors. We're going to be sending out a letter of our own. It would be nice to send them together. The IVHD district letter is along with ours to just encourage donations, encourage them that we all share the same goals, the same mission, and that's quality healthcare. And I think that would be a good show of partnership and working together for that cause. So with that, and then my last and final ask is attend the gala. We'd love to have your presence there, and appreciate your support for the gala. Yes, ma'am.
Question, if I might. Do you have a time for the gala yet? Because I'm putting it in my calendar.
All right, our first I believe it usually starts at 6.
6?
Yes, and that's dinner, cocktail hour, auction, lots of fun.
I'm saving the date.
Good, and it'll be right out here in our quiet area.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Now I just look forward to the continued support and hope that, as IVHD is up and running. And, we could probably, help transform something into an IVHD foundation. Since you guys are really, the good at the fundraising, I think ECRMC's foundation has kind of went dormant for a while, and hope that we can expand it to all of the county.
Great. I plan on sending out that letter probably in a couple of weeks. So if you want to join in and author a letter, then you might want to connect with me, and I'll make sure that gets enclosed with us.
Absolutely.
Mr. Grasson, one of the things we talked about many months ago too was our commitment to this community, that we also want the identity of PMH and let that legacy, still carry on for this campus and stuff. So,
And I think that would go a long ways to reassure donors that their gifts are being managed in that same spirit.
yeah, because a lot of the founding people of PMH, I mean, they need to have that enduring recognition.
Right. All right, there's many, many years of investment and in that whole effort, so I think that great,
Thank you, sir.
keep that going.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Flores.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
But that will move on to item B, and I think there's quite a few policies unless any of the board has any questions on particular policies. I'll open up the motion to approve item B through N. I so moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Berger and a second by Proctor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to item O, informational presentation only, discussion and review of the fiscal year 2026 budget presented by Carly Loper.
Okay, as indicated, this is just informational. It will come back on the agenda for next time for approval. It'd be for July 1st start. I know you guys needed quite a few weeks to review it. There's a write-up in here that kind of explains what we do on how we do the budget. We have the financial narrative that gives a little bit more detail on the changes of the salaries, different, inflation and supplies. And then by department, we have a P&L so you guys can see what we project for this year and what we'll budget for next year and then the changes in those 2 years. But I don't know if you guys have looked at it yet. If you have any questions, ask me. You can reach out to Chris and then he can relay those questions to me. I see, if any, minimal changes between now and next week, because it would be due again next Friday for the next board agenda. If I do make any changes from this one to that one, I will make note of it as well.
Do we have a capital improvement budget?
Or the capital's in there as well, yeah. It's the last one, it's about 6 million, it's about 3.5% of our operating expenses. And we usually don't actually spend all of it, so it depends on how everything's doing in cash. So forth.
Do you have a presentation?
No, just what you guys have in there, your packet.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the board?
Thank you for all the information, though.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Now we'll move to item P. Action to authorize BDLR's system equipment purchase, IV medication pumps with Parabiogas.
So this is, for the IV pumps for medication administration. We did look at 2 other, we looked at Braun and Baxter. This is what we currently have right now, and this is also what ECRMC also has. So the training that it would take, and the implementation would be minimal. And they kind of are best out there. So we would like to move forward with that. There was a recall, where they had said we were gonna have to, change the pumps, this year, but that recall was, what was it? It was called back, and so that doesn't have to happen till 2027 now, but we do have to start working towards that. They will be replacing 39 units as part of that remediation program. The total value of this work is going to be $742,000.
Do you have any questions from the board?
Answer my question. I was gonna ask
How
about,
many units?
well, actually the 7-year contract, since we're talking to El Centro, right? If that comes about, would there be any conflict there? But since they use the same system, there shouldn't be any issue signing a 7-year contract with them.
And it's a total of 362 units, and it includes the modules, the storage pumps and CO2 modules as well. That's all I should read.
So if we don't have any more questions, do you have a motion?
So move.
I second.
I have a motion by Goodsell and a second by Garcia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Move on to item Q. Staff recommends action to authorize MSP agreement with AYA Healthcare with Carol Bojorquez.
So the next one is Aya Healthcare. So there are agency that we use. One of them, we have Aya and we have Benefit. And this is the agencies that help us with contracting and travelers. Mostly we use them for nursing, but do have the ability to use them for other like techs and other areas, clinical areas. So we currently have the contract with Aya. This is just a update. And we have the information that you have.
Any questions?
There's no contract value.
No, because it just depends if we're as we use it. So for example, right now, we have X number of travelers that we use it for, and so depending on the service, like we have them in OB, we pay them a certain rate for their travelers
Well,
and the contract.
we hope it's zero.
That's the goal.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Garcia and a second by Medar. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Move on to item R. Staff recommends action to authorize amendment number 1 to services agreement between Imperial Valley Healthcare District and Moving Mountains HR Consulting with Chris Bjornberg.
This would just be a continuation of the HR services that we're currently using in the absence of a CHRO. And we're using that in coordination with ECRMC and their team as well to be able to make sure that we can bridge that gap as we come closer to that time to merge. And so the initial contract that we had on that was within my purview to be able to sign, but because we're going to extend it out and be using her more as we get closer, the need for this extension is there, which would require approval by you guys as a board.
Any questions from the board or a motion?
I have a motion to approve.
I second it.
I have a motion by Berger and a second by Proctor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item S, staff recommends action to authorize renewed contract with Konica Minolta for repair for X-ray panels and control stations, presented by Carly Zamora.
So this contract is for Quantica, for the coverage of the X-ray panels and control stations. This is the first renewal, of the 5-year agreement, so we're asking for another 5 years. In the last 5 years, we've had 12 service calls. We have 3 portable machines and 3 rooms. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? If none, then a motion. Okay, so move.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Berger and a second by Garcia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. We're on to item T. Staff recommends action to authorize amendment number 3 to professional service agreement with Complete Research Group for financial consultant services. With Aviana Joy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an amendment, the third amendment, the Berkeley Research Group, financial consultant services contract. You may be familiar, a lot of times financial consultants don't have caps on their agreements, but the board, around this time last year, when the board initially retained BRG, felt more comfortable putting caps so that the board could keep track of expenses as we move forward. BRG has met most recently this past Monday with our ad hoc committee in presenting and reviewing the model they've created, the financial model that will be utilized by the district for the combined healthcare system and to start figuring out the funding mechanism for the district. once we are able to populate it with the strategic plan, which the operational group is working on. And it's a pretty robust model and presentation that they gave for the ad hoc. And once that's ready with the final strategic plan, they'll come and present to this group. There's still work to do as we continue through the merger, and they're bumping us against their cap. So we just need to raise the cap. Again, we talked about it with the ad hoc negotiation team, and they were comfortable with the proposal, but I'm happy to answer any questions. It really is just an extension as we continue through the merger.
Do you have any questions from the board? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I so moved.
I second.
I have a motion by Goodson and a second by Garcia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Move on to item U. 8918 ad hoc recommendation action authorizing approval of joint powers and affiliation agreement by and among Bureau Valley Healthcare District and the regions of the University of California on behalf of UC San Diego Health. Adriana Mancho.
Thank you. So first, we're going to entertain public comment on this item. If there are any, I'm just going to go through sort of agenda. We're going to entertain public comment first. So if anyone has a public comment or a question, please come up and read your comment or question now. And then I'm going to introduce our folks from UCSD. We have Pablo Velez here and we have Patty Mason over Teams, and they're going to give a presentation. Some other folks from their team are here too. And they're going to give a presentation on UCSD, and then I'm going to give a presentation on the actual joint powers agreement that is for consideration before the board. So at this point, we'd like to invite any member of the public or anyone who'd like to give a public comment or ask a question to do it now. And please be aware that that's the order of that the board is going to move in. So it's not going to be a sort of interactive dialogue whereby folks come up afterwards and ask questions. You can get your public comments as the item commences. Sure.
Madam President and board members, thank you for this opportunity. I'm representing the medical staff at Pioneers Hospital. On behalf of the medical staff at the Pioneers Hospital, I would like to formally express some of our concerns regarding the proposed JPA presented by the UCSD. We respectfully request that the IVHD board defer any vote on the matter until our medical staff has had adequate time to review and discuss the document. While we understand the importance of moving forward strategically, this agreement carries significant implications for our hospital and the broader community. Unfortunately, our medical staff has not been included in any key discussions that shape the current proposal. Specifically, the JPA recommendations were developed in coordination with ECRMC leadership and medical staff without input from the Pioneers medical staff. The timeline for review is extremely limited. This was made available approximately 3 days ago. And as you're aware, our physicians are all already stretched with extremely busy clinical responsibility. The proposed changes to the bylaws and leadership structure, including the role of the chief of medical staff and the CMO, requires thoughtful examination. There is a lot of physician folks have expressed their concern regarding the performance history of the proposed management structure, both at ECRMC and another system. I would like to point out that it's a public knowledge that the UC has been, ECRMC has been under UCSD management for the last 11 years. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm open to criticism. Under this system, ECRMC has failed as an institution to provide medical services. The existing management system that included the future proposed CEO as well as the CMO have been partly responsible for the financial crisis that has faced ECRMC. On the contrary, Pioneer Hospital has not been in such a position so far, to my knowledge. In addition, Pioneer Hospital has been the #1 hospital in the Imperial Valley voted by the residents of the Imperial County for 6 consecutive years. definitely without UCLD management. In addition, the public information available that's open to everybody at Shop Chula Vista shows it had about 40 million deficit during the period when the same leadership is part of the UCLD management of the future combined hospitals. It's unthinkable that a failing system will take over a relatively stable hospital without clear demonstration of the rationale behind it. It's unthinkable in the corporate world. Then why should it be different? You can't expect Intel to buy NVIDIA just because we're a big name as an Intel for a long time. Because of these reasons, the medical staff.
Can you wrap it up, Dr.?
Yes, ma'am. For a decision of this magnitude, we believe it's critical to ensure transparency, input from all the affected stakeholders, and a thorough review of the process. We also invite the board members and all the public to attend the Pioneers Hospital as well as ECRM's medical staff meetings on June 16th and 17th and 17th. I respectfully submit on behalf of the medical staff at Pioneers. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have any other public comments? Mr. Raven?
Good evening. Members of the board and staff. It really didn't do much for that agreement except for change the names. You know, and I appreciate the fact that you did get it to the public on Saturday versus Friday or versus Monday. I appreciate it very much. And I appreciate getting, having you including the word copy in the book, in the package. The Lumazar, same as problems that El Centro has. You don't have any power once you sign this agreement to do any management of the hospital. They have complete control, and it takes worse than an act of God. The prevailing standard of care, you have to prove that whatever they're doing doesn't do that. And I doubt that they would ever go that far, but you don't have the ability to, in my opinion, from what I read, to hire outside persons or companies to analyze what the problems are. El Centro, as of the end of March, has lost $16 million. And you guys aren't too concerned about it, it doesn't appear to me, because you're signing an agreement with the people that caused that, or at least didn't stop it from happening. I give you one instance that my wife, who worked at El Centro Regional in the dietary department for over 15 years, and they changed how they do their meals to a more expensive way that like they do up in San Diego, where you can order anything off the menu. And so dietary has to have all those things and the meals for that, you know, almost ready to go, because they have to deliver within 30 minutes. Okay, that costs the hospital in El Centro, according to what my wife figured out, was $30,000 a month extra in wasted food, because it doesn't work. We don't have that many patients. And so it's a variable that they're not considering. You know, you have to have all of this, you know, this food available. And I won't go into that any further. But that's just one place where they could change something and save, you know, $250,000 or better.
Mr. Rubin, you can wrap it up, your time's up.
Okay. The, UCSD has no liability, no financial or fiduciary responsibilities, just like El Centro gave that away. And, you're supposed to approve the budget, but it doesn't say any place in there where it says you can help prepare the budget so that you know what's in it. And my last comments would be that you're really not doing your fiduciary responsibility to the people of the Imperial Valley in going forward with both of these, items. And you're getting in way over your head. The last thing, and I want good healthcare for Imperial County, and it looks like UC San Diego will be providing it, but you won't be the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? And we'll move on to the presentation.
Okay. So I do,
Oh, no, just.
I do have a presentation that I'm gonna give on the actual joint powers agreement, a summary and overview. But before that, we want to introduce and welcome Patty Mason, who's appearing over Teams, who is the UCSD Health CEO, and Pablo Velez, who is the ECRMC CEO, who are gonna give a presentation on UCSD, the kind of history of UCSD in the Valley and the benefits to working with UCSD as you consider this joint powers agreement.
Before we go, do we want to move, or is it going to show on the TV so the audience can see the screen as well?
That is a good question. Is there,
We have someone in the audience that has it, can share it if that works. There you go. Does that work?
you want me to turn it or?
Yeah, turn it so the audience.
1 second.
And maybe move the microphone over by the owl so we can hear.
I want the board to be able to see it too, though. I just want to back it up.
Oh, computer.
Does that work?
Yeah, we can see it. We're just having some adjustments down here.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Can we put this next to the owl? Because I don't know that they can hear it out there. Please.
Patty, we're gonna ask you to speak up so that the members of the public who are here can hear you too.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that loud enough? I apologize, and I apologize for not being out there in person today after saying yes to the first patients from Wuhan, China on February 5th, 2020. I got my first round of COVID this week. So I have never had it before, even though I've been in the hospital every day since. And so anyway, I'm home with COVID, and I apologize for not being there in person, but hopefully you're all grateful for me not being there for that reason. I really appreciate the opportunity. We've been out working in Imperial Valley for over a decade, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we've done, but also more importantly, who we are, and then what we hope we can do going forward. There were some misrepresentations in the public comments. I'm not going to address all of them, but if I can address some of the questions along the way, I will. And then I'm sure, Adriana, when you do your presentation, you can talk about the fiduciary responsibility of the Imperial Valley Health District in holding UCSD accountable for the work that we do. So we started working out with Imperial Valley with El Centro Regional Medical Center in 2015 after a failed merger of Pioneers and El Centro that year. And what we had negotiated really was a management service agreement. We never actually managed the hospital itself. We had management services. We provided those services. The board asked us to provide a chief medical officer, which we did. And then we were asked, because the board was concerned at the time that we wouldn't be able to recruit a high-level CEO, that we hire the CEO, but that it would report to the Imperial Valley Health District Board, which it did do. The very first time that we actually became fully accountable for the management of El Centro Regional Medical Center was at the brink of its bankruptcy at the end of 2022, at the beginning of 2023. That's when we stepped in and said, if we're going to be held, asked to be held accountable, we actually need to be able to be accountable, and we need to be able to operate the hospital without quite as much interference as what was going on. And so we took that responsibility on. We were not paid a management service agreement for that. In the very early days in 2015, we were, but we had really sunsetted the management service payments to us many years ago. So we really just did a cost reimbursement of the CEO himself. And so when Pablo came on as our CEO, he is provided by us through what was the management service agreement, became a joint powers agreement, and we are reimbursed for costs related to Pablo, and that's it. We do a lot of other things for El Centro Regional Medical Center, which I'll talk about in a minute. None of that is reimbursed. None of that is paid for. That's all work that we just do pro rata. So just a little bit about us quickly, if you go to the next slide. I'll go through this very quickly and then allow you all to kind of get the gist of the joint powers agreement itself. So who we are, as you all know, we're part of the University of California. We're one of 10 campuses. We're one of 6 health campuses. We're the only academic medical center in this entire region. And what does that really mean to all of you? It means not only are we the place that really focuses on a lot of quaternary care, we really focus on clinical trials and research. We focus on bringing new treatments to patients' bedsides. We focus on training the next generation of physician. And this all becomes kind of important when we think about what's needed to really sustain Imperial Valley in the long term. So we're focused on, on caring for patients, creating a healthy world, really reaching out. We're also the only public in the region, so we have a very deep public mission, and that's in a lot of ways why I think we lend ourselves to being a good partner, because our commitment to the public, whether you are covered by the best commercial insurance in the world or by Medi-Cal, or you don't have insurance at all, you can get care with us. Next slide. So we focus a lot on our quality and safety, and these are just a snapshot of some of our awards. We're rated as a top 20 health system in the country, and we've worked hard for that. We have 11 subspecialties that are ranked in the top 20 in the country. And again, that's important because it's not necessary when you're getting most of your care, but if you need a very specific type of treatment, this is the kind of physician, this is the kind of place where you want to get that kind of care. And it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, you want to have access to it. Last week, we are incredibly full, and we have patients waiting to get into our hospital. So we're not in the business right now of looking to try to, move patients out of an area and bring it to UCSD, either to Hillcrest or La Jolla. We are much more interested in keeping patients where they are in their communities, close to home, making sure that they get the care there. But if they have that event that requires a quaternary service, then we want to be in a position to be able to provide that. One of the benefits that El Centro and the El Centro community has benefited from in relation to us, and this again just happened last week. I had an email the other day from our chair of neurosurgery. We were full. We were not taking transfers for any type of service from anywhere. And there was a patient out in El Centro who desperately needed to get transferred to UCSD. We didn't have a bed. We had patients waiting for beds. We didn't have a bed. Our emergency department physicians who take care of the emergency department in El Centro called our chief medical officer, and we were able to make room and bring that patient in. And that patient, without exaggeration, and I'm happy to have the physicians come talk to you about this, her life is now saved. And that life would not have been saved if we were not able to take that transfer. And we've tried to always, over the course of our relationship, to prioritize the Imperial Valley and to prioritize El Centro, to try to take care of those quaternary needs when they come up, so that we don't have bad outcomes with those patients. And so just as a matter of course for us, part of one of the benefits of working with us is that we do try to prioritize the needs of the region, and we don't ask, well, is it a Medi-Cal patient? Is it a this kind of patient or that kind of patient? We just say, is this a patient that has a quaternary service and need? We'll take them, and we do our best to take them as much as we possibly can. Next slide. The other thing I think that's unique about us, this is our public benefit slide. So this just, again, really highlights our public benefit that since on an annual basis, we've provided benefit into this region of almost $750 million a year of service that's provided without reimbursement. So I think that outstrips every health system in our region by far. And again, it's the public nature of who we are. Next. So a lot of people ask, what is the vision, for Imperial Valley, and what is it that we want to do as UCSD? But more importantly, what is it possible? How can we start thinking about healthcare in the Imperial Valley? And the work that's the most exciting to us, and I really appreciate the leadership from the Pioneers medical staff being here. The strategic plan is not built. Like, we need everybody's input. We need the community's input. We need the medical staff's input. But the whole goal, really, the problem is that you have too many patients leaving the valley to go get care. We need to build a lot more clinical infrastructure in order to make it possible for patients to stay in the valley for care. Patients aren't necessarily leaving the valley for care because someone's driving them that way, or insurance is. They're leaving because the clinical infrastructure in the valley doesn't exist to the degree that it needs to do the kind of care that you could possibly do. And so the idea, again, with scale, since finally these systems are coming together and we're going to have scale, we're going to be able to build more clinical infrastructure, subspecialized care, more cancer care, more diabetic care, more cardiovascular care, more ortho. What happens when you start thinking about the entire region together gives you, the scale that you need to drive the infrastructure development so that we can actually keep people in the valley for care. And I don't have a very great way to say that. I think we should ask the public and kind of get some feedback. Like, how do we all share this vision of creating a healthcare delivery system in the valley that allows 80-90% of what needs to be taken care of to stay in the valley for care? I mean, that's really what we want. And then what's the infrastructure that we need to make that happen? And again, I don't say that in the I'm sure a marketing person would have a much better way to say that, but I'm hoping as we get out and we're able to work more with the communities and the physicians and others, that we'll find a way to say that in a really beautiful way. We have training programs. We can bring physicians. One of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest opportunities is that usually when trainees go to a place to train, they have a much higher likelihood to stay. So how do we take advantage of not just our training programs, but some things that are evolving through the state to get more trainees into the valley so that when they're done, they can stay. They stay to continue to deliver care. And then bringing not just world-class care, but also, clinical trials. We have patients that come from Imperial Valley every single day. They travel every single day, back and forth. They could be coming for infusions or radiation, but they also could be coming for clinical trials. Like, how much better would it be if they could actually just get those clinical trials delivered at El Centro or Pioneers? Better for the patient, better for the community, better for the health system. It just works. And so those are the kinds of ideas that we have kind of stitched together in this broad strategic vision. But again, we need a lot more community input. BRG is doing a great job thinking about how do we wrestle more costs out of the system, bringing scale together on all the administrative services. And I think the exciting job of the medical staff and the community and the patients and the nurses is to say, okay, but what do we want from a clinical scale point of view? Radiology we can count on, critical care 24/7, subspecialty services through telehealth that we can't get any other way, pathology, anesthesia you can count on, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's just a huge amount of opportunity now that we're beginning to pull this all together. Next. Tammy, can you move it? Stuck? So I covered most of this. Let's just go one more. So the one thing I will say, so I think that the future is incredibly exciting from the point of view of what we can, go ahead, move to the next one, what can be done together. What I'm worried about, and I'm sure everyone is that the entire landscape is changing. And I've been in both, Washington, I've been in Sacramento, I've been, go back. On the federal front, I mean, there are going to be impacts on Medi-Cal, and the razor thin margins that the two hospitals currently operate at, will get more challenged. So that's why the scale is important. I have to say that in going back and talking to both the Democratic and Republican part of the, part of the Congress in Washington, the one thing that really got their attention on both sides was not UCSD, not what's happening in San Diego, but what's happening in Imperial Valley and what these kind of federal cuts could mean for healthcare delivery in Imperial Valley, and advocating for ensuring that those cuts don't come at the cost of putting so much pressure on the systems there that we suffer from an inability to do what we just talked about in terms of the vision. So there's headwinds here, right? There's headwinds federally. There are going to be cuts. Obviously, there are going to be changes on the state side as well that are going to directly impact the populations that we take care of. And the payers are also continuing to put a lot of pressure. Inflation is outstripping reimbursement. Like, it's a really pressurized, if it wasn't pressurized before, it's even worse now. We've got to really work together. We are actually very transparent and happy to dialogue at a later point about anything folks want to talk about. But our hope is to get this over. We're not getting paid anything other than the cost of the management that we're providing for the district, and then hopefully we can really build out a really incredible delivery system that really meets all of your needs and the needs of the Valley. I think that's all I need. One last thing. And then a high note, because talking about all the federal changes and state changes is kind of a bummer. So we just finished this program, super excited about working with Imperial County and with our psychiatry department to develop this psychiatric residency program. We just announced it the other day. So this is just an example of the kinds of things we do. We've received accreditation. We'll have this partnership. We've got this $2.5 million grant from HCI to establish this residency program, psychiatry residency program. And what we hope, right, as a result of this is not only do we have manpower, we have residents who are providing care, but again, that we create a pipeline so that these kinds of specialists stay in Imperial Valley and build a career there. So I will end on that note. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. There, Paulo?
Yeah, I just want to make, with my help, make a couple of, comments about, a couple of comments about, I heard somebody said that, we were part of the management team that was at UCMC, and, blamed this team for the financial issues. We were not part of that team. We've been working very hard. I assembled a team that has decreased the cost of care and have been looking at completing the seismic for the hospital, completing the ASB building. And part of that debt that you see is paying back those loans that took on bonds to finish the seismic for the entire hospital. Into the comment that Howard made about Sharpsville Vista, we were in the middle of COVID. Shortly after that, I left Sharp, and we had, like here in El Centro, we had to hire a lot of traveling nurses that were very expensive, that hit the bottom line. And in addition to that, we just had recently opened a new patient tower that we built, and that cost the hospital $300 million. So I'll leave it at that.
To Adriana.
Sure. So I'm gonna present on the joint powers agreement, and then we'll open it up to the board for any questions or comments. Okay. Sure, I can see my own presentation. Okay, so I'm gonna start with just one slide of history here. So there currently exists a joint powers agreement between UCSD, the City of El Centro, and ECRMC. It was approved by the three public entities effective May 7 of last year. And that is the agreement that established UCSD as manager of ECRMC. It's a 5-year agreement. So that agreement is effective through May of 2029. There's a section of that JPA that contemplates the potential assignment of ECRMC to IVHD. And in the joint powers agreement between the city, ECRMC, and UCSD, the agreement requires and establishes the city and ECRMC's intention to condition any transfer of ECRMC upon the transfer and assumption by IVHD of the joint powers agreement and the ECRMC bond debt, including all rights and obligations of both the city and ECRMC as appropriate. So if we were to complete the transaction merging ECRMC with IVHD, we would be beholden to the terms of that joint powers agreement through May of 2029, no matter what. As we read the joint powers agreement and as our AB 918 negotiators, started getting their arms around what this merger would mean, we decided to approach UCSD with a request to renegotiate the joint powers agreement, which again, they didn't have to do, but they agreed to renegotiate a new joint powers agreement that would supersede the current joint powers agreement between the city, ECRMC, and UCSD. The recitals of the agreement, I'm not going to go through them all, but they are meant to establish the background and the goals of the agreement. I've highlighted 3 in this presentation. The first is recital E, which says that consistent with the goals of AB 918, IVHD intends to acquire the El Centro facilities in order to combine the Imperial County's 2 hospitals into a single hospital across 2 campuses in order to qualify as a sole community hospital and achieve savings through the coordination and expansion of medical service and combined economies of scale. On or around March 18, the city and IVHD executed a term sheet for an asset transfer offer wherein the city and ECRMC would transfer to IVHD the El Centro facilities upon terms set forth in the term sheet and as would be more specifically established in a written asset transfer agreement. We hope we're very close to finalizing that asset transfer agreement, and we hope to bring that to this board in the next month. IVHD has determined that the healthcare needs, now recital G, of the Imperial County would be best served by UCSD's assistance in advising IVHD in 2 phases. And you heard from UCSD Health CEO, some of the kind of behind the scenes conversations that our negotiators have been having with UCSD about all of the benefits to working with UCSD and the vision that UCSD sees as possible for IVHD's constituents. So this joint powers agreement is very different because, well, first of all, it establishes 2 phases. There's going to be a phase 1 of the agreement and a phase 2. Phase 1 would be UCSD coming on board immediately or effective July 1st or whenever the agreement gets approved by both parties to assist IVHD with the strategic planning in terms of vision and operation moving forward for the combined healthcare system. Phase 2 would be the management and oversight of the healthcare facilities, the combined facilities, once they are owned and operated by IVHD. The parties believe that the affiliation contemplated by the proposed joint powers agreement would result in, among others, the following benefits: an increase in access to more specialized healthcare for the County of Imperial, improved access to healthcare for vulnerable populations served by the combined healthcare facilities, and additional support and scale for improved expense management, physician recruitment and retention, workforce development resulting in the long-term stabilization of the healthcare facilities, clinical, operational, and financial positions. So the term of this agreement is also 5 years. It would start July 1, 2025 until, and would terminate on July 1, 2030, unless at some point the parties renegotiate a renewal. And in the fine print of the joint powers agreement, the parties are obligated to start negotiating like next steps 18 months before the end of this agreement to give both parties ample opportunity to prepare for whatever comes next in the future. But this would be a 5-year commitment, and it's meant to parallel the 5-year commitment of the joint powers agreement that is currently underway between ECRMC and UCSD. So phase 1 would start July 1, 2025 until the closing date of the hospital. And that's just the strategic planning portion, helping us to gear up for what will be the combined healthcare system. Phase 2 would start effective on the ECRMC closing date. So the date that ECRMC transfers over to IVHD and becomes the property and ownership of IVHD, that would start phase 2. And that is when the management component of UCSD's obligations would start. So the key provisions of phase 1 is, UCSD won't be managing or overseeing the current operations of PMH or IVHD. Those duties will remain with the IVHD CEO. UCSD would serve in an advisory and consulting capacity to assist IVHD with regulatory and strategic planning for the purposes of aiding IVHD as it anticipates the integration and delivery of clinical services and operations for 2 previously distinct healthcare entities. UCSD would direct reasonable expertise and resources at its disposal and within its reasonable business judgment and discretion to participate in clinical, strategic, and facilities planning for the future operation of health facilities. So what does that mean? What does that look like? It means that as we develop the facilities master plan moving forward, UCSD is going to be spearheading that for you as we look for the vision of what the facilities should look like in terms of the real estate for the combined hospital system, services. UCSD would be at the helm. UCSD will provide guidance to external third parties retained by IVHD to perform specific functions such as facilities master planning and other long-term contractual commitments. We're in this funny spot right now of, we want to merge with, we want to bring ECRMC on board. And, you know, what is the management of the two hospital system gonna look like beyond that? And so this is sort of our answer to what that's gonna look like over the next 5 years. So phase 2 steps into play when we close on the hospital. Here's this is the highlights, but I'm gonna go through some of the more specific provisions. And specifically, I'm gonna try to sort of explain some key differences between the joint powers agreement that's currently in place and the one that we're contemplating now. So UCSD would act as manager of the healthcare facilities, and that's PMH, ECRMC, and the clinics. They would have to provide management services in a cost-effective manner, comply obviously with all applicable rules, regulations, laws. They would get reimbursed for all compensation and benefits associated with the CEO and UCSD for travel, for time, travel, lodging, and meals, and reasonable cost related to managing the hospital. That's similar or consistent with the current ECRMC model. Also consistent with the current ECRMC model, IVHD would not pay UCSD a management fee. They're doing it at cost. And for context, we did look at other public hospital districts in California that have management agreements in place, and there almost always is a cost. So that's a benefit. Some key provisions of the joint powers agreement that are new. This is language that the ad hoc negotiators tried to be very thoughtful about that doesn't exist in the current agreement. So under the new agreement, UCSD has the contractual obligation to discharge its duties as manager with the prevailing standard of care by exercising the skill and ability customarily exercised by reputable hospital managers, providing the same or similar services in California. While exercising their professional skill and expertise, UCSD shall use reasonable diligence and best judgment to perform their services with the best interest of public health, right? So not the best interest necessarily of UCSD, although we would hope that that would be the same, but they have to perform their services in the best interest of the public's health. And, you know, one would think like, of course, that's something that they are already doing for ECRMC, but it is meaningful to add that into a contract to hold feet to the fire, right? There was language in the current agreement that we took out, and that language is language that would otherwise allow UCSD to consider interests and factors, any such interests and factors as they desire without implicating any fiduciary duties or other obligations that it may owe as manager of ECRMC. So that's out of the agreement now, which we thought was significant. Because again, it's kind of replaced with the obligation to perform services within the best interest of public health. So what are UCSD's obligations under the agreement? I'm going to go through a highlight of what they are. It's a very long document. It's, I don't know, 50 pages or so. So I'm going to try to hit the high points. They're going to manage and direct hospital operations. They do have the sole and exclusive right under the contract to do that, which is not unusual for management agreements. They're going to manage in consultation with the IVHD board, the selection, retention, supervision, and discharge of the healthcare facilities chief executive officer, chief operating officer, and CFO. So these employees may be UCSD employees, or they may be IVHD employees at UCSD's election. Currently, only the CEO is a UCSD employee. Under the new joint powers agreement, that may be the same, that may change. There is new language in our joint powers agreement that allows IVHD to participate in the hiring and ongoing evaluation of those positions at least annually. So that's language that doesn't exist in the current agreement. UCSD has to assist with and supervise governmental and corporate compliance, manage and oversee HR, negotiate with labor unions and employees on behalf of IVHD. We've tried to add some language that accounts for reasonable and prudent fiscal management. So we've added language that requires them to manage and oversee these things subject to reasonable caps on expenses set by the IVHD board from year to year through the annual budget process. So you will have the ability to set caps on spending, and if they want to go over those caps, they have to come back to you and explain why. They have an obligation to procure insurance, direct food operations, supervise AP, contract management, payroll, benefits, marketing, all of the administrative functions that a manager would normally handle. Supervise quality assurance and performance improvement processes, risk management, patient and family satisfaction, licensing and accreditation and program evaluations. New language in this agreement that doesn't exist in the current JPA, they have to regularly report details about all of these things to the IVHD board, no less than every other month. They would manage relationships with partners and JVs, handle negotiations for contracts, and they are under no obligation to cure monetary defaults except with funds from the relevant facility. That currently exists in the ECRMC Joint Powers Agreement. What does that mean? So if this is the easiest and most simple example, if there's a breach of contract and there's a liability suffered as a result of that breach of contract, who pays for that breach? ECRMC pays for that breach. UCSD is not on the hook for that breach. ECRMC is because the contract was with ECRMC, even though UCSD is supervising it. Some language that we added is that remains the same unless the default is the result of UCSD's gross negligence, fraud, recklessness, or willful misconduct. And UCSD has to disclose defaults or claims over $50,000, no less than monthly. And that's a benefit for this board. Why? Because if you employed your own CEO and your own CEO, just without a manager in place, made a mistake and suffered a contractual breach, you would be on the hook for that anyway, right? And now you've got this layer of protection whereby if it was gross negligence, fraud, or recklessness, you have UCSD's backing to commit that they would do a good job managing the facility. They're going to supervise preparation of the annual budget, which would be done through your CFO and the CEO and the finance department. Financial and operating reports, billing functions, and spending. The new language we added was that they must use commercially reasonable efforts to oversee operations such that IVHD does not exceed budgeted amounts. So yes, stay within budget, apart from reasonably necessary material deviations, which they would have to notify this board at least quarterly of any or all proposed material changes to material deviations from the budget projections. And material deviation is defined in the agreement as more than 20% over an individual budgeted line item or more than 10% over the total expenditure of all line items in that budget. So we have, because this is a hospital and you have to have some wiggle room there in an emergency to give them the ability to fix the problem, right? If the sewer main breaks, they gotta go fix it without having to convene a board meeting and get you to come and approve the budget. So that's why material deviations are necessary, but they're not allowed to spend exceed budgeted amounts. UCSD also, this is a really important provision that UCSD agreed to that was important to our negotiators, is that they have to present and create a strategic plan to improve and expand the provision of healthcare services in Imperial County. And that plan has to be agreed to by the parties, and UCSD has to update and review that strategic plan at least annually throughout the term with quarterly reports regarding the goals and the metrics that have been met and advanced through the term. So you'll have your game plan, your 5-year game plan, and then you'll have quarterly reports on how they're meeting those goals and metrics. And if they're not, that's where you hold their feet to the fire again. What are IVHD's obligations under the agreement? Right now ECRMC does, but you would continue to hold the hospital and pharmacy licenses, and the contracts and permits would be in your name. You're the provider within the meaning of all third-party contracts. You have to fully and promptly cooperate with UCSD in the governance and operation of the hospital. You can't be obstinate or stop them from trying to do their job. You have to meet the bond obligations, provide sound fiscal management and funding for the hospitals, and financially support their capital operations, insurance, etc. And this board retains, and it's a regulatory requirement, the ultimate control and authority over patient care, medical, clinical, and professional services as required by law. A couple other provisions, and again, this board has gotten the joint powers agreement. We made it available to the public. The negotiators have certainly seen it for months. But it was made available to the public, I believe, last Friday night. So there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm not going over, but the other provisions that I thought were significant is UCSD cannot sell, assign, or transfer any part of their obligations under this agreement without your prior written consent. So they can't just sub something out and bring someone else in to do their job. IVHD and UCSD both have a nice mutual benefit commitment, which is expressed in the agreement. And this is something that I think is unique to public institutions. And the commitment is just to continue delivering high quality healthcare services to residents, regardless of insurance status, regardless of income, regardless of demographics, obligations to continue participating in Medicare and Medi-Cal. There is an indemnity provision for both parties. There are termination provisions for both parties. Notably, the termination provision for this board would be in 8.1, and that's if UCSD fails in any material respect to comply with the covenants expressed in the agreement, and I've read through some of them, then you got to give them notice of such a default. They have an opportunity to cure, and if they don't cure in good faith, you can terminate the agreement. And there's other provisions that allow UCSD to terminate as well. There is an option to acquire. This right of first refusal exists in the current joint powers agreement. And it says that IVHD can't sell or transfer ownership of the healthcare facilities without giving UCSD a right of first refusal and an option to buy the healthcare facilities themselves for as long as this agreement is in place. And we think that's fair given the significant amounts of kind of capital and investment that UCSD has put into certainly ECRMC and would put into both facilities once this agreement is in place. There was language in the prior document that allowed UCSD to maintain that option to purchase for 2 years after the agreement ends, and they agreed to take that out. Just reestablishing the goals again. The negotiators, UCSD, feel that the affiliation contemplated by this joint powers agreement would result in the benefits that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or you can direct questions to your negotiators or to UCSD.
Do we have any comments or questions from the board?
I have comments. I'm doing these comments in respect for all of you, and also you're not personal or anything, but I'm compelled to express my deep concern because whose vision is this? Is it UCSD's vision, or is it a collaborative vision of all of us, including the physicians, the staff, and all the other people that are involved in this healthcare system? Because what I'm getting is they're going to be the spearhead of all the vision. So that's, that's my question. And, right now, all I can see is the past. Today, that's all I can see. And yes, you've been there 2.5 years, pop up, but nothing really. I mean, from what Patty presented, nothing has actually been put in place of all those wonderful ideas that she wants to, I mean, she can come and do slides and it looks really rosy, but also too, is that really going to take place? I can't see a vision for 5 years from UCSD or this present administration. So I need to have a guarantee that we're going to go in the right direction, or are we going to just fail altogether?
I think
Pablo, can you
Patty alluded a little bit.
Pablo, can you come up to the podium?
And
I have my hand up as well, please.
I think Patty alluded a little bit to that in terms of this is going to be created with the board members in the community and input from everybody. It's not a vision that is UCSD vision. But it's a collaborative effort between the board, UCSD, the community, the physicians, and the healthcare system.
ahead, Patty.
Yeah, I just a couple, can you hear me okay? Because I understood I was breaking up a little bit before. If I do, just let me know. I think in 2015, when we first started coming out, one of the first things that we asked to try to do was that there was nowhere in the valley was there 24/7 critical care services. And that was a little scary. And so we talked to El Centro as we were stepping into that role, and we actually sent a proposal to Larry Lewis at Pioneers, and we asked for the opportunity to set up a scaled 24/7 critical care service for the Valley. And the answer actually was no at the time. But we went ahead, and once particularly we took over the emergency department, that was a meaningful impact to the community. When COVID came, I called up because I saw what was happening in San Diego, because we were on the tip of the spear, and said, you are going to need to get ready for critical care services. We sent our teams out. We sent our equipment out. We built out critical care services for Imperial Valley and for El Centro that saved hundreds of lives. I'm not saying that to get a big pat on the back, but I am saying it as a point of we have actually been good to trying to provide these services. What I'm happy about today is actually today, I think on both sides, now we actually do now have 24/7 telecritical care services for both hospitals. I think this is like the first thing we've all done together ever. Pablo can keep me honest, and Chris can keep me honest on that. So I think in that sense, I think we're in the beginning of really building out our opportunities. We don't want this to be our vision. We're in an awkward spot right now because our responsibility right now is to El Centro as the manager. We want to build out a county-wide vision that is not our vision, it's your vision, it's the community's visions, it's the physician's vision, it's the medical staff's, what the needs are and how we're going to build infrastructure to meet those needs, not UCSD, because we can't do this all ourselves. I'm going to be super clear about it. There's not enough of us to go around, but we can all do this together, but we have to work together. So this is not my vision. This is not UCSD's vision. It's got to be the region's vision. Everyone has to be aligned to create this sustainable, high quality health system with more services than you've ever had before, with more access to physicians who are going to stay in the community, et cetera. But again, I think once we kind of can get through tonight, we can start getting that processes in place to kind of receive all that input from everybody so that we can put together a plan that's not just reflective of UCSD, but is reflective of what you all want. This is for what you all think you need and want.
And I would say this is a step towards, don't forget, the only purpose of phase one is to create the strategic vision, is to create this strategic planning. So Lord, I hope it's less than 6, but roughly maybe 6 months that it's going to take to get to closing on ECRMC, that in that time frame, UCSD's team would be working with PMH and the community to create the strategic plan and the vision. And then once the deal is closed, then it is contemplated that would be executed. But that's kind of why, it's awkward because we haven't even signed or approved an asset purchase agreement yet, but we need the plan first, right? We need the plan first and the vision. And so that's why it's structured in a phase 1, phase 2 manner.
I'll just throw in there too, just some of those questions that you had. In particular with ECRMC, where they're at and so forth. When you go into a situation like that Pablo and his team have had to all be a part of, I mean, it's a pretty tough situation. I mean, it's not something that you can just, it doesn't turn on a dime, right? The ship takes a bit to turn. And when you look at what's happened, and it's really easy to kind of just look at everything on paper and kind of look at it from some of those simple number standpoints. But when you look at where they were prior to that, and you look at what Pablo and his team did last year, in particular, that was a big gap that they were able to go from where they were to where, where it was to where they were. They closed a big gap. So the trajectory is the right direction. And that's what you're looking for is trajectory, right? You're looking for trajectory in the right direction. And as long as that's sustained and you can have the support and you have the means necessary to sustain that, then you can move in that direction. And if you have the support of a good board like we have now, that makes that much easier. When that support's not there and you're constantly trying to grasp at those things and trying to, every little thing that you do to try and move the things in the right direction is looked at or scrutinized or they don't care because there's another agenda involved, then that makes that process that much harder. And so, I can look at it from what they've been and where they are now, on that perspective and say that the trajectory is in the right direction. And that's what you want, even for us, right? Our trajectory is in the right direction. Last year, we did, like, if you want to just do everything at face value from that standpoint, last year, we did better than we did this year. This year, those numbers went down. Does that mean our trajectory is moving down? No, it doesn't. There are all these other factors that are always kind of come into play that, we don't necessarily have that crystal ball to always account for, but we manage them as we go through that process and then take something that could have been worse and we make it better than it was. And so then the impact wasn't as negative as it could have been. And so that's what, I mean, with what they've had to deal with over there, I can tell you from what I know, just looking straight at the numbers and stuff, like my hat's off to him and his team for the work that they've done there, just like my hat's off to this team here and the work that they've done. A lot of work has gone into getting the direction moving in the right direction and not moving in the direction that it was before. So there's a big difference, I think, between where you could say the trajectory was 2 years ago and where that trajectory is today.
Yeah, but I also feel, I mean, everybody's pointing fingers to everybody, but also, I mean, the fault lies with everyone, including UCSD for the past. Before Pablo, if you want to say before Pablo, because now it's going forward. But what happened before that? And will we actually fall back into that pattern? That's my question.
Oh, Patty, I think you're on mute.
So again, two parts to that. UCSD was not managing El Centro before February of 2023. When I mean management, I mean we had the rail rates. We could actually manage it. Before that, that was not the case.
Didn't you sit on the board since 2015 or 16?
I sat on the board. I did. I sat on the board. Correct. And
Mr. Edwards was hired by you?
Mr. Edwards was hired by the board. We did a favor for the board who asked us to hire someone to run a process for them. They hired him. I was part of that process. I'm not saying I wasn't. And I'm also not throwing Adolph under the bus.
Right.
El Centro Regional Medical Center had a 2020 seismic requirement. That was not true for Pioneers. It's a 2030 requirement. So this is a super important point. They actually had to get, there was an earthquake. They had to get the hospital seismically compliant as of 2020. The reason why the debt was taken was to create that a seismically compliant hospital, which I'm happy to say today, because of a lot of the work we've done in the last couple of years, is now complete. That's what the debt was for. It's the same debt that Pioneers is going to face in the future. And again, these are old arguments. Do we want to say we don't want to partner with Pioneers because you're not seismically compliant and you're going to have to face this music too? It just happens to be, a decade later.
Right.
No, we don't want to say that. We want to say, let's link hands. Let's figure out how to build this infrastructure in the region so that we have strong infrastructure, not for just 2020 and 2030, but for 2040 and 2050.
So when you look at combining, making the healthcare district stronger, by getting the two hospitals in the clinic together, we're going to be stronger. Because when PMH goes through the seismic compliance issues, we're gonna be there with a fully compliant hospital to help and assist and perhaps move and have beds capability to take care of the community while they are doing their seismic upgrades to the infrastructure here. So that is going to be the beauty of the investment that ECMC had done for the past several years and having the hospital compliant so that when it's Pioneer's turn to get bonds to build either a new facility or retrofit, we'll be there to sustain the healthcare district. We all want to do a great job for this community. If we didn't want to do a great job, we wouldn't be here. And I hope that the entire board and the general public sees that. We are here because we wanted to do a great job for the community. And I see the need of combining and building the infrastructure every single day. I see that helicopter landing off the hospital at least twice, 3 times a day. And I'm pretty sure PMH sees the same thing. We don't have the infrastructure built to take care of the community, and we need to do a better job at that.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Do you have any comment? Do you have any board member comments?
For the longest time, I felt similar to Enola, the way she feels. And what I always heard was, well, UCSD is gonna allow, if we ever merge with them, the providers from PMH to contribute to the strategic plan, et cetera. And it's always words, but it's not until we manage to adjust the JPA. And now it's in writing, and recital G spells it out that the providers from PMH are gonna contribute to that. So the vision that we have moving forward to be stronger, because I am a firm believer that although UCSD being a big entity, they have a lot of resources. However, I've always been of the opinion that it doesn't matter how small you are, if your operation is catered to your community, then there's always best practices that come out of the uniqueness of the community, which every one of these cities has. So right now, LA is burning, all the major metropolitan areas are burning, and I pray that those kinds of situations don't come here, because I don't think we'd be prepared, just like we weren't prepared for COVID. And then the other aspect is being a border community. Those kind of unique situations, they don't have anywhere in the state, maybe San Diego. So I am happy that the recital G spells it out that there is definitely going to be attendance by the providers from PMH to contribute to the successes of, because really UCSD has not done this in combining 2 of these hospitals here in our communities. But guess what? Now every provider and every community member is going to have a contribution to make it successful. And I'll like I said, I felt like Enola for the longest time. And as time has gone on, especially not coming from a medical field, but coming from an emergency management type of career, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we are going to be stronger. I believe it in my heart, and that's all I had to say.
Anybody else? If not, I do. So I would say this JPA and knowing and trying to find a middle ground to take with what we were given, because JPA came with the hospital. And one of the first conversations I can say that I had with Patty Mason was to renegotiate it. And it came with open doors, because it was like, this is going to be for the whole community, not just what's best for ECRMC or what's best for PMH. Because I think, together we're one. And so, especially to the staff and providers who have been stuck through this 2, 3, 4 years of uncertainty in this merger, you guys went from COVID into this, and I really hope that we can, not dwell on the past and really just focus on the future and together make this healthcare system really great with all the experts of which you are. I know there's some heartburn around this decision of this JPA. I know some of you, especially those at Pioneers, you're worried. You're worried that this is the beginning of the end for the hospital that you poured your time, energies, and your lives into. You're worried that this is not a new beginning, but the start of something that's taken away. I hear you. And I want you to know that this agreement is not about closing the hospital or punishing your hospital. This is about taking this hospital and El Centro Regional and merging into one system that can be stabilized. The one thing that both of your hospitals have in common, you guys have been in survival mode, trying to keep the doors open. And it's really not because of anything you've done wrong. I know the CFO, everybody that works their butt off to try to make sure that it's stable, but the leadership and the structure hasn't been there to support you. Politics have gotten in the way. And there should be no politics in healthcare. It sickens me to see how political merging a hospital when we have a system that is not working has become. It is sickening to see how much it has divided us when healthcare should really be the one thing that we all agree on. Because every single one of here, whether you're a provider or medical staff, at the end of the day, one day you're also a patient. And when decisions like this are made, it can't be driven by politics or personal agendas. And that's what you have when you have an elected board. And no staff member in here can sit here and honestly tell me and look me in the eye and say, I haven't in the past had a board member jump out of their lane and give me direction when it wasn't coming directly from the board. Because that direction should be only given to the CEO. A board has one employee, the CEO. And I promise you, every staff member in here has gotten direction from somebody that is not the CEO. And this JPA with UCSC helps keep the politics out of healthcare. It keeps personal agendas out of healthcare. It makes it work so that if UCSD is the manager, that the board sets a strategic vision and the goals for them, and you work off of that. We give them their goals. They report back to us on it, and we can hold them accountable. But we don't have the ability to throw a tissy fit when our CEO says the wrong thing, and then we go and fire him and put the whole healthcare system in play, like we watched happen last year. I'm not putting up with it. I have no desire to. And if that means doing a JPA agreement like this, it's our board's responsibility to put healthcare first and politics last. And so this isn't the beginning of the end. It's the beginning to protect what matters, to protect the people who work here, to protect access to care in every part of the valley, and finally, to give our staff and leadership the support you deserve. This vote is not about giving up your hospital. It's about giving the entire system a fighting chance. So thank you all who will work for us for showing up every single day and showing the true face of resilience. Because this has been an awful ride, or I can only speak for myself, but looking at the look on all your guys' faces as well, it's been awful for you too. And for that, I truly am sorry. But I'm so grateful that you show up every single day. And I hope that you continue to believe in a vision and help drive that vision to create a better healthcare district moving forward. And with that, do I have a motion?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Goodsell and a second by Garcia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to management reports.
We have no finance report. We have the next board meeting, but just a reminder that our auditors will be on campus at the next board meeting to do a presentation for you guys.
Perfect. Hospital operations.
Good evening. I do have a CNO report which I submitted earlier. There's a couple of things I want to focus on. We did have our T&B survey last week. It went really well. We had, they were able to close all of the previous nonconformities except for one. There was substantial evidence that we had done a lot of improvement, but we still need to work out a few things. And so that one will stay open, and then we're gonna receive 3 level 1 nonconformities and 3 level 2 nonconformities. Level 1 nonconformities means we have to have an action plan in place, and then later on we will have to submit evidence that we have, that we put our action plan into place and that we're showing improvements. And then level 2 nonconformities are less serious. Those, we still have to provide an action plan for that, but we don't have to later on provide objective evidence. But when they come the following year, they'll make sure that, we had an effective action plan. So that was one of the highlights. The other thing I want to highlight is that we did have a luncheon for the new graduating nursing students from IBC. And from there, we were able to do interviews. And so we did hire 20 new nurses. And so that was really great. And they'll be starting soon, and we'll have a whole orientation program for them. The other thing I want to mention, it's not in the report, but I do want to mention it. Week of June 12th through the 18th is National Certified Nurses Assistant Week. And so I just want to highlight the strong work that they do to support our nurses and to take good care of our patients. We did send out something via email today to thank them for all their hard work. And so I don't know if you have any questions regarding that.
I had a question. Thank you for all the great information that you provide us and everything you're doing. And I really like the details as to the transfer outs and the reasons why, what have you. And unless I missed it, is there anything that could show us transfer ins, such as like maybe coming from an urgent care center or urgent care, like anything that comes into us from another source?
We can, so we have started to log whenever there's a request to transfer someone to our facility. Usually it will be from CRMC, like it'll be a pediatric patient or from OB. And so we have started to log that. I can in the future, provide that information. That's really the place where we get transfers from. Once in a while, we do have transfers. Say we transferred a patient to UCSD and the patient doesn't need that higher level of care, but they still need, to be hospitalized. Sometimes they'll ask if they can send the patient back to us, so we'll receive the patient that way.
Do we ever have
as well?
Do we ever have the scenarios where someone goes to urgent care and the doctor there says, no, you know what, you need the ER instead of us?
We do have that where they're coming to us, but not necessarily like
Referral.
like an admission. It's more like, hey, they're being referred to the ER for care, and then they make the determination of whether they're gonna admit or not. I could dig a little bit to see if there's a way for us to capture that data, but I would have to explore it.
Carol, regarding graduates, are they from IVC and San Diego State locally?
So the luncheon was for IVC, SDSU, and then we had, I believe it was CNEI present. And then we also had the executive team from CRMC there, and we were able to present them. And the message was, that we're coming together, and there's a lot of future for nursing here in the Valley. So I was really happy to be able to do that. So yes, all those. And there was also RNs and LPNs.
Are any of your nurses instructors at the school?
They are, like most of the nurses that work there are also RN. The instructors are. So either they teach clinical or they actually do lecture and run some like second or third semester. All of the nurses there, most of them, either here or at CRMC.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
No.
If not, we'll move on to clinic operations with Carly Zamora.
The report is in the packet. If you guys have anything that you wanna ask me about, please feel free to. I do wanna take, notes of a few things. The DMV, when they were here, they went to the Pioneers Health Center, the Women's Health Center, Wound Care, and PT. There was two minor findings, something as simple as in Pioneers Health Center, the clinic is, the eye wash bottle was too small. So we have a larger eye wash bottle, so very minor things. For radiology, we did complete or the agency completed the report to submit to HCI for the CT scan project, so more to come. I'll give you guys information as that comes along. It's in review right now with the agency, so you get it to HCI. We did go live also in radiology with Notable, so we're very excited about that. We went live last week, so that is for patients to pre-register before coming for the appointment, so they no longer have to wait. Come here and register in the front and then go to radiology. They can bypass the front and go straight to radiology. By the second day, we had 50% that had actually utilized the app, so it's wonderful. Staff are loving it, so we hope to expand that to lab. And then on the last page, just some items to take note to, I will be bringing back in the next couple board meetings, 6 physician contracts. Urology, GI, some renewals for pain management and cardiology. So if you guys have any questions on those, feel free to reach out.
Do you have any questions from the board?
Oh, I did. Are those full-time positions?
GI is part-time. The second one is a PEDS GI that will come once a week. Urology renewal, cardiology on-call, pain management renewal that comes once a week.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Will the part-time be taking call?
Yes. The part-time will be here Mondays and
Monday.
Mondays and Tuesdays.
And we'll do CEO update.
I can also do a little bit for, Kamat since he's out as well. Just so that everybody is aware, we do finally get occupancy in the south side of the building there in Calexico. That all finished up today about 2:30. So that's a big thing for us because that's finally done. We've also been over the last little bit, we've been working quite a bit on the Cerner information and trying to get that piece done. We have had some correspondence with our some of our contracts with like Blue Cross Blue Shield that are ready to move forward, but we've kind of had to push them put them on hold as well because we need this all to line up. Otherwise, if they change over and or start using our new TIN number, we're not there yet in Cerner to be able to bill out that way. So then we would send them claims and they wouldn't pay them. So we're working with them on those pieces to try and manage that process and make sure that we can kind of line these things up. So there's a lot of moving pieces still from the chow work. The chow technically is done, but these are all components of that process that we're working on. We do have, like we mentioned before, the new license. We did get updated license renewal that shows the correct names on it today, so that was good. Excuse me. Last meeting, you guys had also asked for some data. I did supply that to you guys today. I sent you that email. So if you have any questions on that, please let us know. But that goes over, some of the information about what services are being currently provided. It gives a 4-year history on that, so you can kind of see where it's up, where it's down, kind of some of the trajectories on that. It also talks about all of the out-migration that we have and where some of that is going. And they broke it down for you guys by the different hospitals that it goes to as well. So you have there's a wrap up that has the fully all of Imperial Valley, and then you have it by the hospital that they're being sent to as well. So if you have questions on that, please let us know. But we've got that information for you. There's still more work that's being done, as far as on the facility side. Our, RFP is done tomorrow, so, we will have some good stuff to be able to present to you guys on the 26th, to be able to make a decision for that master planning. Still waiting to see everything that comes out on that, but that's something that, we've been monitoring. Also, right along with that, we're still in need of a facilities director, and that's something that we've been working on. This week, Dave from ECRMC and myself have, done 4 interviews for that position. We think we have some good people in there that we're gonna be able to bring in. So we're hoping to wrap that up. And that's something that we're already doing jointly with ECRMC. And there's several other things like that that we're working on as well, knowing that we're coming together from that standpoint. So a lot of movement from that direction. DMV coming in, that's one of those things that kind of throws things off for a day or two, from our normal, because we do normal and we do DMV on top of that. And the team did a phenomenal job with that. A lot of really good comments from the 3 surveyors that came in about the direction that things are moving and what it looked like from before to now, and just our team in general and how well they responded and how they were able to speak with them about the different things that are going on. So they had a lot of really good things to say about our staff and the work that they're doing. So I want to make sure you guys are aware of that. And then of course, on top of that, just in general with, again, all the work that has been going on from the onset of the dissolution through now, and still doing, like, our team is still doing all of that work like we talked about, and still trying to wrap all that stuff up and still trying to make all those things happen. And on top of that, our team is also working with the ECRMC team to try and make this transition much better, much easier, since we have a little bit more of a runway on that. And so the team here and many of the team that you see out there and others that you don't even see here that aren't here tonight, are really working hard and doing a lot of work. And I can't even express my thanks enough because they do such a phenomenal job, and it is a lot. It's a lot that we've asked them to do over those last, 5.5 months or so. And there's going to be more that we're going to keep asking them to do as we move forward to make this happen. So just want to make sure you guys are aware of that, that all that work that's happening in the background, because it's a lot. So that's my report.
Thank you.
I have one question. I just, I wanted to know, is anything being put on hold because of the merge and when it comes to patient care, like department wise or anything?
Nothing's necessarily being put on hold from that perspective. We do have some things that we're looking at, like from some contracts where we're looking at, we had mentioned this before, that we're looking at bringing on teleneurology. And so that's something that it's not put on hold, but we're not moving as quickly on that because we have these other things that are going on. And so making sure that we're handling that appropriately. We actually just got another somebody else that threw their hat in the ring this last week on that as well, that we'll be looking at. That'll be the 4th vendor that we
Well, my question is, does South Central have already neurology?
They do. We do. This, yes, through UCSD.
So, should we just move on that contract? What are we looking at other contracts?
Well, part of that is the other 2 contracts that we've looked at, besides the UCSD contract, are substantially cheaper. Like, not just a little bit, but a lot cheaper. And for the services that are provided as well. And so we did make UCSD aware of that, like that we wouldn't be able to move forward with them because of it's such a huge price difference. We haven't heard anything back from them on whether they would make any changes at this point. So that's one thing, because we have talked about that, Pablo and I had talked about, we do that a lot as far as hey, who do you guys have? And so then we start looking at those things, try to match them up.
Right. But they have to be cost effective.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that's why we didn't just jump on that one, is because it was substantially more expensive, and we're hoping maybe we could work something out on that, but we haven't seen that as of yet.
Hopefully in the future, we won't just contract with UCSD because they have this service. We'll look at the contracts. Okay,
Oh, absolutely, we do that now, so.
thank you.
First, I do have something. Since you talked about Musk, did you say anything about Alexico, that community, anything having to do with us? As far as anything you can share?
No, not a whole lot, just the biggest push has just been trying to get that occupancy permit, and it was quite an ordeal to do that. We had, some of the inspectors that came in and one said one thing, somebody said somebody else, and the city saying something different. And so really managing that whole process to get them all on the same page so that they could actually sign it off and give us occupancy. That's been the biggest issue that we've had down there at this point. Outside of that, there hasn't been any other anything that he shared with me as far as what the community was saying or anything from that perspective. As a general, just to throw that out there so that everybody else is aware as well. We provided that information to you guys as a board on the numbers for the urgent care down there, and they're moving in the right direction. We anticipate that there'll probably be a little bit of a lull during the summertime, which we kind of have as well. And Dr. Tyson said that he anticipates they'll pick up again in the fall. So there is that component of it. The team here has been working a lot on just the different clinic pieces. Carly Zamora has spent, she actually was there in El Centro yesterday with their team looking at the clinics, and she's going the person who is kind of her other half that's over there is going to become a provider. And is going back to school for that. And so she's gone over and got to learn a lot about what's going on over there. And so some of our biggest things that we're looking at is how we're going to manage that process. And the two different rural healthcare facilities that we have in in Calexico. We have a lot of ideas on that, but there's still a lot of things that we have to look at as far as that goes, and being able to make sure that we can provide those services on that south side of the building, for the building that we own down there, where we have occupancy. The talk has been to put in a CT in there and be able to do some imaging, maybe some ultrasound and things like that as well. In front of that building, being able to put in a pharmacy. So those are all services that we've discussed before that we would be doing as IVHD. Pablo and I have had some conversations about that as well, what that would look like. And so that would be our plan moving forward, is to have those services being provided by IVHD at that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not legal update.
No update for today.
With that, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:34 p.m. until the next regular morning meeting on the 26th at 6 p.m. Thank you.